Welcome to Stago Educational Shorts. Short lectures covering the essentials of key coagulation topics. Presented by world-renowned experts. And designed to fit around your busy schedule.
Welcome to this Stago Educational Short. Today we're joined by Chris Reilly-Stitt. Chris has over 30 years of experience in the haemostasis and thrombosis sector, and in 2021 he joined UK NEQAS as its Deputy Programme Manager. Today he's going to be discussing vaccine-induced immune thrombocytopenia and the challenges that it can pose to laboratory diagnosis.
Hi, I'm Chris Reilly-Stitt, Deputy Manager, UK NEQAS BC. I'm here this afternoon to talk about vaccine-induced immune thrombocytopenia and thrombosis. We're going to cover three particular aspects of this on this presentation: a bit introduction to the syndrome, a background to the diagnosis, and findings from the recent NEQAS exercise. So, just to introduce you to VIT and its actual syndrome, earlier on in 2021, there were some reports of thrombocytopenia after the AstraZeneca vaccination, and that was first reported in the New England Journal of Medicine by Andreas Greinacher et al. That was quickly followed up by another article, this time an original article by Scully et al, recording the similar clinical picture following AstraZeneca vaccination. And this was quickly followed up with yet another piece in the New England Journal of Medicine, this time an editorial, describing a similar clinical picture following the Moderna and the Pfizer biotech vaccinations going on. Following these reports, there was an initial safety concern around the AZ vaccine, and this was investigated by the UK MHRA and the European Medicines Agency. They both confirmed that the risk of venous thromboembolism associated with the vaccines was not higher than the background risk in the general population. A communication from the ISTH SSC subcommittee on platelet immunology, they confirmed that there was 4 features to give a diagnosis of VIT: thrombocytopenia with a platelet count of less than 150 times 10 to the 9 per litre, thrombosis at unusual sites, raised D-dimers of greater than 4,000 micrograms per litre, and raised titers to IgG antiplatelet factor 4 antibodies. A diagnosis of early VIT was also submitted by the SSC subcommittee, and this would have been with a finding of thrombocytopenia but no bleeding or thrombosis, and at least one abnormal coagulation parameter from prothrombin time, activated partial thromboplastin time, fibrinogen, and or D-dimer. We had an expert panel of haematology consultants within the UK who also put together a VIT diagnosis criteria. So a definite case for them was cases would usually present 5 to 28 days after vaccination. It would be characterised again by thrombocytopenia, raised D-dimers, and thrombosis, which was often rapidly progressive. There's a high preponderance of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, portal vein and splenic vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, and arterial ischemia are also common, as well as adrenal infarction and hemorrhage. Intracranial hemorrhage can be significant and unexpected. Typical laboratory features include a platelet count of less than 150 times 10 to the 9 per litre, raised D-dimer levels above a level expected for VTE, and low fibrinogen levels. Antibodies to platelet factor 4 have been identified, and so this has similarities to heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, but in the absence of patient exposure to heparin. Platelet factor 4 antibodies are detected by ELISA HIT assays, but not usually by other HIT assay methods. They also had 3 other likely scenarios that could be associated with the vaccine. So a possible case was any patient presenting with acute thrombosis or new onset of thrombocytopenia within 28 days of receiving the COVID-19 vaccination. An unlikely case, however, was if there was a reduced platelet count without thrombosis, with D-dimers at near or normal levels and normal fibrinogens. Also, a thrombosis with normal platelet count and D-dimers less than 2,000 micrograms per litre and a normal fibrinogen. And they've also recommended that a probable case could be D-dimers greater than 4,000 micrograms per litre for D-dimers, or greater than 2,000 micrograms per litre with strong clinical suspicion. Okay, so the finding from the NEQAS exercise. So what we did is we had some samples that we got from a patient with a diagnosis of VIT that was undergoing plasma exchange, and these samples were harvested for us to distribute as part of the supplementary exercise. A HIT patient that had citrated plasma stored was also processed as part of the exercise. And finally, we also supplied, as part of the exercise, samples that had no clinical suspicion of VIT or HIT, and this was sent to all our participants within the HIT program. 85 laboratories received 3 paired samples that were lyophilized in liquid for VIT, lyophilized and liquid samples for HIT, and lyophilized and liquid samples that had no clinical suspicion of VIT or HIT. And the table on the right here is the method table for all the different tests that were taken, or the participants performed in their local laboratories and returned to us for a data analysis. So this table is the ELISA results. So we have just 4 ELISA methods that were submitted with results to us. And as you can see here, we have column on the left hand is the ELISA methods by manufacturer type. And then we have a series of 6 columns going from left to right, and they recorded all the ELISA results and the interpretations. So for VIT sample that was lyophilized and VIT sample that was liquid, the ELISA methods made them all positive. Every single sample for VIT that was lyophilized and liquid was positive. For the HIT samples, we've seen almost all of the samples hit lyophilized plasma as positive, apart from 2 particular sets of results, one from a LifeCodes kit and the other one from the Ask Elisa kit. And then for the negative results, we've seen all methods, all ELISA methods, get full negative sets of results. So this next bar chart is showing us the ELISA methods for lyophilized and liquid methods. And why we've decided to produce this particular chart and show it as part of the presentation is we want to show that there's good commutability between lyophilized and liquid samples. Normally, from a EQA point of view, we send out lyophilized samples, and we took the opportunity to send out some liquid samples in this instance because we believe that the liquid would be computable or commutable for these ELISA methods. And also, as part of a bigger exercise within the supplementary survey that we sent out, we wanted to see if there was any benefit for some other non-ELISA methods. Did the liquid perform better than the lyophilized sample that was sent? But we can see here, the ELISA, it all worked. Liquid or lyophilized virtually gives the same results in terms of interpretations, slightly different values for the ODs. So this final table is a summary of the non-ELISA methods, okay? And on the left hand of the table, we have each of the methods listed. So we have chemiluminescence, we have lateral flow, we have immunoturbidimetric, and we have gel filtration, and then we have a functional assay at the bottom of the multiplate assay. We can see here that for chemiluminescence that it didn't perform particularly well with the VIT samples lyophilized or liquid. Okay. The lateral flow methods, that was the same for lyophilized or liquid by and large. For the immunoturbidimetric, once again, very similar findings that it didn't work for lyophilized or liquid. However, for the gel filtration, we did see good agreement with the gel filtration test and whether the sample was positive for VIT or not, and that was both in the lyophilized and the liquid columns. When we looked at the HIT samples for the chemiluminescence, there was a spread of results, so around about 67% would have been positive for the VIT sample, for the lyophilized specimen. The liquid sample, it was slightly higher. The lateral flow, there was a real mix of results there, and it's quite hard to take any sort of information away from that. And for the immunoterpenometric metric, we also seen that there was a real mix of results where it wasn't always picking up the positive results for the HIT samples. The gel filtration, once again, performed pretty well at picking up the positive samples. What we can say about all these non-ELISA methods, that if there's no evidence of HIT or VIT, that they're pretty good at picking that out and saying that the samples were negative for those particular clinical scenarios. What we haven't answered though is when we produced a sample for the HIT, samples that went out lyophilized in liquid, we diluted a known HIT positive sample. And it was known HIT positive with one particular method. And we think we've taken that level down to close to where there is a clinical cutoff for each of those assays. And that may well explain some of the variable results we were getting for the HIT samples. And that would be samples 2103 and 2104. The other thing is that some assays don't work unless it's a fresh patient sample. So lyophilization and even liquid samples that are sent out as part of these exercises might give variable results with those particular methods. So overall, this was just basically a snapshot of anti-PF4 testing for methods for VIT as part of this emerging story. We collated some data from the NEQAS participants on assay sensitivities to VIT-associated anti-PF4 antibodies. And we were able to confirm that ELISA methods had no false negatives in the VIT samples. Plus, we feel we could confirm that there was good commutability between the lyophilized and the liquid samples for the VIT patient when employing ELISA assays. So I would expect most clinical and laboratory teams to be aware of, let's say, limitations of the assays. And if there is a strong clinical suspicion, I would suggest that you repeat the test first, check perhaps IQC and calibration, and then at that point, maybe repeat with another assay if that was available. However, answering that is based on some of the data we've got back from this particular exercise, and this was based on one patient sample, so we didn't have multiple patients. If a more robust exercise would be distributing multiple patient samples at different time points within their VIT treatment regime. I think, you know, if they can't offer the test themselves, they should really be sending it to a specialist hub. It's, you know, I think some of what we believe is that this story may well have a finite period of time for it to run, and therefore setting tests up and getting validation done is quite lengthy for laboratories. So therefore, if they can get the assay done somewhere else as opposed to setting it up themselves, I think they should do that. So the only surprising results we really got was when we were diluting the HIT positive sample, we thought we had diluted it significantly enough to make it positive for quite a lot of the non-ELISA based methods for detection of anti-platelet factor 4 antibodies. It seems though that we overestimated the level of positivity and therefore took that dilution close to assay cutoffs for those particular methods that aren't ELISA, and that may well have resulted in them producing some results that were negative in a positive sample that we had distributed. So finally, I'd just like to thank Stago for allowing us to produce this video presentation that gets our supplementary information on this VIT exercise out to as big a population of laboratory scientists as possible.
Thank you for watching the Stago Educational Short. You can find other presentations by world-renowned experts on similar topics at www.stagowebinars.com. To learn more about the field of hemostasis and thrombosis, download iHemostasis from the App Store or Google Play Store onto your tablet. iHemostasis is a global education tool dedicated to the pathophysiology of blood coagulation, illustrated by clinical cases, designed for everyone from clinical professionals to students. You can also sign up to our newsletter to keep up to date with the latest scientific topics, educational materials and giveaways at stago-uk.com.